Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, there's a global currency reset taking place. There's no doubt about it. There's a little war going on about what direction we're going to go in. We know that China and Russia are trying to work on moving us into the gold standard, or at least that's what it looks like. And we know we have the Great Reset trying to force us into the so-called central bank digital currency that they can digitally control. This is why now more than ever gold and silver is important. And it's something that you should take seriously. Too many people are focused on a spot market value. That is not the true value of gold and silver, not at all. We know that gold and silver have more than just monetary value. So just keep that in mind. What gold and silver has to offer you is more than just money, it's your freedom. People don't talk about that enough. If you are familiar with what the central bank digital currency is, who the Great Reset is, and what their plans are for us, then you'll get what I'm talking about. Too many people right now are too focused on the spot market value going down, down, down. We know why it's going down. We're going to get into that here in just a moment. Before we get started, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. As you are aware, it helps me get past the YouTube algorithms that are doing their best to shadow ban people like me. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. Right now is a great time to be buying gold and silver. Yes, the values are going down, but that just means you could buy more at a cheaper price. I said in my videos before, even if both of them went down to $1 an ounce, it would not be a big thing to me, because there's more to the precious metals than just the monetary side of it. I was being serious when I said your freedom as well. I explained to you that the paper market is driving the value of gold and silver down. It has a reason. As liquidity becomes an issue in the market, the powers that be are forced to push their paper out on the market to cover the shorts. This means time's running out for this manipulation. Not to mention there's already a worldwide shortage on both gold and silver. It's just going to add to all this frustration. So when you do go to buy your gold and silver, check out our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you are a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you'll get a free half ounce of silver. Currently, silver is sitting at $23.13. I was telling you the other day their goal was to get silver down around $11. I don't know if they're going to achieve that, but there's more than just the fact that they're trying to crush the price down. They're being forced to sell the paper in the paper market by the moves that Russia made. So yeah, we saw silver go from $26.21 down $3 in just 10 days. That's terrible. But if you're sitting around trying to time the market for when you think it's the cheapest, then you're really missing the reason why precious metals are important to have and get now. So silver at $23.13. You should be viewing right now gold and silver as going on sale. You can see gold at $1,890.70. The same thing around the 18th, you're looking at silver at almost $2,000 at $1,997. It is now down over $100 in those same 10 days. But here's the thing, gold is rebounding. It does that. Every time they try to crush it, it goes back up. The world demand is putting too much pressure on this. So gold at $1,890. Let's hear what Mike Pinto has to say real quick about why gold and silver will go down at first, but to be careful trying to time the market, because there's no doubt there's going to be a boomerang effect as soon as it drops and you see comics in the LBMA get exposed for their Ponzi scheme. Then you're going to see a real price correction in the gold and silver.
So I did reach the maximum allocation to precious metals about a month or so ago. I'm now at 18 to 20%, which is my max exposure to the metals and mining sector. It had been working out very well for us outside of today. So I think bear market rallies or counter trend moves are very violent. So you're seeing a big up move in the markets today, sell off in gold and the miners. I still think we're in a big, long bull market. And I think it's just getting started. It will be, here's the caveat, it will be truncated for a very short period of time when and if we reach that liquidity crisis. At some point, maybe in the fall, is my best guess, whenever the Fed decides to really get going with their over $1 trillion per annum of monetary destruction.
Now keep in mind that he's saying by this fall of 2022, because somebody else is going to bring up another event that's happening in 2022 around the same time. And these things are going to crash together.
Draining the balance sheet, also known as quantitative tightening. When that gets going in earnest, in conjunction with rate hikes, as that slams into a very weak economy, the chances are very high, in the 90% or above, that we'll have a liquidity crisis. In other words, when the credit markets freeze, and then they just dump everything. And that includes gold. It's just a huge surge or a lurch towards US dollars. Everybody wants them, everybody needs them. So in that case, gold will sell off. But that'll only usher in the second leg. Let's call it the second.
You already said gold and silver will sell off. So there's a combination of things happening right now. You have the comics and the LBMA trying to cover all the short contracts before they get themselves in hock with the people. While that's happening, Russia's forcing the paper market to be exposed. You heard Andrew Maguire in a video I did the other day explaining how that's happening.
Second leg of a multi-year bull market in precious metals, in my opinion.
It's a multi-year bull market, which means the value of gold going up and up and up. I want you to think about this. If you have been illegally manipulating the gold and silver market, and you've been selling in contracts hundreds of times more silver than you actually have, and hundreds of times more gold than you actually have, well, eventually what's going to happen is people are going to start wanting those precious metals delivered to them. They're going to say, I don't want to extend my contracts anymore. I want the metals. I want delivery. Now, the comics and the LBMA are screwed. Somebody has to get them the metals. Well, how are they going to afford to buy all those metals? How are they going to be able to cover as much of the contracts as possible for both gold and silver? It's going to cost them an arm and a leg. And then where are they going to get the physical gold and silver? Real simple. Drive the value of gold and silver way down so that when you purchase it, you buy it extremely cheap. At the same time, you're scaring the amateurs and the speculators that invest in gold and silver. They go, oh my God, I lost so much money, and they start selling their physical metals. So not only are you lowering the price so you could buy it cheaper, but you're scaring people into parting with their actual inventory of gold and silver out of fear, out of panic. That's why you ignore what's going on and just hold.
I mean, you want to be diversified. If you're not in an actively managed strategy, the second best place is a diversified portfolio, which would include cash and precious metals. So it all depends on how strong inflation becomes. And I can make a cogent argument that after this next collapse comes and Jerome Powell is forced to rescue and reliquefy the banking system, even though inflation is still way above 2%. Which is
You heard what he said, forced to liquefy the banking system. They have to have cash.
sometimes no matter how high inflation is, because your other alternatives just don't work. Well, it's all about control. And unfortunately, we have powers that be that just think that they can control markets and that people shouldn't have the final say. So that's when you end up with saying things like, we can never have a recession. We can never have a bear market. We need to adopt things like universal basic income and a central bank digital currency, because we, being that small elite group of people in the FOMC, or you pick the central bank heads of the world.
Yeah, the Great Reset and the Bank of International Settlement. Okay, so let's just take 2 seconds to reflect on what he just said. He just told you that there's a group of elite people out there who are manipulating the stock markets and not allowing the markets to flow freely. They're robbing you of your money. They're taking away your rights to pursue life and happiness. But they have a much bigger agenda. This is part of it. And he's right. First, they're going to strip you of your money. That's only one part of this puzzle. That's where the central bank digital currency comes in. Because they're going to offer you universal basic income. And the only way you can get that is through the central bank digital currency. And keep in mind, it has an expiration date on it, which means if you don't spend the money when you got it, it expires and goes away. In addition to that, it's programmable, which means they'll be able to program what you can and can't buy, whether it's foods, guns, weapons, whatever you want to do with your own money. They're going to control what you can and cannot buy with the digital currency. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to show you another part of this right afterwards.
The governments of the world and central bankers of the world are usurping your individual freedom, liberty, and decision-making powers, taking it from you. You serve a very real purpose here. I mean, these types of channels, these forums, are essential for people to at least think. Why have I relinquished my right to have my dollars that I earn lose their purchasing power? Look at the monetary base, by the way. It has doubled. There's been a doubling of the monetary base in the last 2 years. So why have I allowed, who voted for that?
Mike's right. See, the money is losing its purchasing power, but gold and silver don't. So you're watching the spot market and you're looking at it going, oh my gosh, look at gold and silver are going down in price. But that's not the real value of gold and silver. The purchasing power remains the same. So when the doo-doo hits the fan and why it is that you need gold and silver out of the system, and they try to force you into this digital currency or try to force you into universal basic income, remember, gold and silver is the only real money. You're going to need that to buy the things that you need, things that will help you to survive: food, clothing, shelter, medicine. Because if these people have their way and you say something bad about the government or try to protest them, they just cut your money off. They don't care if you got kids or not. Let them starve. That's what you're up against.
Who allowed that to happen? Who sanctioned that? Who assented to have that power ceded from them? So, this is why I come on these programs, because I want people to question and not let it happen any longer. We can survive as a country and as a people, allowing the market. What is the market, by the way? It's millions of people having the right, the ability to decide what they want to buy and at what price. Everybody has that power.
They do right now, but once the central bank digital currency comes in, you won't have a choice. They'll be able to program those digital currency, picking what stores you can and can't buy from. Keep that in mind. There's an old saying, you can't live off hope. You'll starve to death. That means you have to take action. You have got to do something to protect yourself and your family. Gold and silver is outside of the system. But not just that, I think it's time for people to reach out in your community, start strengthening it. I feel sorry for the people who are out in the city, because once this food shortage happens, and it's coming, people are going to start starving. If you ever seen the movie Contagion, what did they start doing? Well, they start going into each other's houses and shooting each other because they need to survive. They start stealing the food, medical supplies, whatever it is they need. It's going to happen in the city first and foremost. You've got to start coming together. You have got to start growing your own food. You have the abilities to do this. We've gotten so used to technology spoiling us. Fast food restaurants, computers, cell phones. Nothing is done at home anymore. And now they got you. A lot of people don't know how to fish. A lot of people don't know how to hunt. A lot of people don't know how to preserve food. Millions of people are going to die. Or you're going to be forced into a system that's going to enslave you. Here's the other thing I'm talking about. This is another reason why it is you need gold and silver. Something about this fall coming up. There's going to be a market crash. Everybody sees it, and why it is you need gold and silver. And I keep telling you, stop paying attention to what the market says the value of gold and silver is, because it's much more than that. You're going to need it to survive. But we're being hit on more than one front. You got the jab. That's hitting us on one way. You got our markets crashing where they take all of our money. See, they want you desperate enough that you'll do whatever they want. Literally. You become enslaved to the system. That's why you need gold and silver. But here we go, because it's not just through the jab, and it's not just through our financial system that are hitting us. Here's the other way.
So Russia initially invaded Ukraine. on February 24th. So let's just see how many attacks there have been on food supply vendors of any kind since February 24th. And a lot of this is research that I have been able to pull off the internet. I think it's very interesting that when you try and research things from too many years prior, a lot of it disappears on the internet, so you can't get that research anymore. I was having a conversation with David Dubine a while back, and he had asked me a question about our acceptance of food supply shortages. At what point in time will people realize that things are actually getting bad? I told him that because we only get access to this information for short periods of time, and then we forget about it, we adapt to it, we move on. We're only ever focused on the things that are happening right now. We forget a lot of things that have happened, a year, 2 years ago, and so we don't necessarily see the decline. So people aren't ever really going to reach that point of panic until it's too late, because they're not able to put things in sequential order. That the information is just not there anymore, and we're trained to only focus on the relevant information of the time. So these things are happening right now. It's got to have something to do with the war in Ukraine. On February 28th, Shearer's Food, which is a potato chip plant in Hermiston, Oregon, had a boiler explosion. On March 13th, Nestle, the Hot Pockets plant, their frozen Hot Pockets plant in Jonesboro, Arkansas, had a fire. On 3/16, there was a Walmart fulfillment center in Plainfield, Indiana, which caught on fire. March 28th, Maricopa Food Pantry in Arizona caught on fire. On March 30th, the Penobscot McCrum potato plant in Belfast, Maine caught on fire. On March 31st, Rio Fresh in Texas caught on fire. On April 11th, East Conway Beef and Pork in New Hampshire caught on fire. Gem State Processing, which is a potato processing plant in Idaho, an airplane crashed into it. That's not the only airplane crash I'm going to mention here. Taylor Farms in Salinas, California caught on fire on April 13th. That actually happened the same day as the plane crash on the potato plant in Idaho. April 18th, Azure Standard in Oregon caught on fire. Azure is a company that we order from. I actually just planted a bunch of einkorn seeds that came from Azure. Or is it Azure? Azure? My wife will correct me on that when she watches this. On March 23rd, the Centre de... This is a really long name. French. It's an industrial food processing plant in Quebec. That also caught on fire. April 24th, the General Mills plant in Covington, Georgia, plane crash. So since Russia has invaded Ukraine, we've seen 12, I guess you would call them Western, North America really, food processing plants catch on fire or have planes crash into them.
You see, it's one thing if it's one plant or another. That would be a coincidence. But this number of food processing companies here in North America in such a short period of time? No, that's part of the agenda. You starving. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'd say when you go do the research, go back to 2018, because I think that's when everything really started to go into effect. Coming up to where we are with the RONA, all that was meant to do is expedite things, make it go quicker. But let's continue.
Which is actually, it sounds like a pretty significant number. I've heard some people online talking about it being 24 to 30. I didn't get that high. I got up to about 12 to 13. There was one, I thought I had 13 at one point in time. I just listed off 12. But let's go to the very beginning of the year, because that's when this really starts to get a little more interesting. Going back, February 15th, largest soybean plant in the U.S. in Claypool, Indiana, caught on fire. That same day, there was a fire at the Bonanza plant in El Paso, Texas. Just a few days before that, maybe a week or two, in Wisconsin, Wisconsin River Meats caught on fire. So that was 12 or 2 around February 5th. January 7th, a poultry plant in Hamilton Mountain, Ontario, caught on fire. So there's another one in Canada that caught on fire. On January 21st, a potato plant in Warden, Washington caught on fire. On January 14th, the Cargill Nutrena feed mill caught on fire. Some of you may have remembered hearing about that. At the time, talking about feed shortages was a really big deal. We still have feed shortages. They haven't gone away. But I don't think it was caused by a single plant fire, but that is still a significant memory, at least for me and for a lot of people who have been following this stuff.
So grain and feed shortages, how do you feed your livestock? If you can't feed your livestock, then you either reduce the number of livestock that you have, or they starve. And if they starve, then how do you send it out for people to eat? See what they're doing?
And on January 1st, Van Drunum Farms in Illinois caught on fire. So just looking back to the beginning of the year, we're now up to about 18 unfortunate events surrounding food manufacturers between here and Canada. And I didn't even mention the largest food logistics company in Taiwan that caught on fire within that same time frame. And I mean, you could probably look all the way around the world and find more of these instances.
I did a little research, and just like that, look at Western Standard, exclusive destruction of food plants, a global phenomenon. It's one thing if it's one company or two, but there are tons of them around the world. What are the odds of all the food processing plants burning down? You have to ask yourself that. So now you know there's an agenda. An agenda is to reduce the world's population through viruses and starvation. This is why now is the time to come together with your community. You need to reach out to your local businesses, your stores, your banks, and start coming up with something. Let's take a look. 43,000 chickens died over in the Dutch town. So what do we have going on over here? We have poultry farm in India. So there was another poultry farm in India, and yet another one in India. You had a poultry farm in Sri Lanka. You had a pig farm over there in Northern Ireland, a poultry farm in Ireland as well. Chile, food processing, Bangladesh, England, Germany, Florida, South Australia, Banham, Northern Ireland again. Here you had another egg factory in Northern Ireland. Chickens were killed, Northern Ireland and Belfast. Here you had a pig farm in Northern Ireland. See, they're all different dates. England, a warehouse burned down. A bread factory in Sweden. Here's your grains and soil that's necessary to feed your cattle, feed your livestock, as well as make bread. It's grains. We're talking about our food supply, people. That's in Lebanon. An explosion in England destroyed what? Grains. See that? A pork processing plant, Mexico. Chicken farm destroyed, Virginia. So when we keep telling people that the Great Reset has an agenda to depopulate the earth one way or another, now you can see them playing out. Through the jabs, through our financial system, and through our food supply. And also oil and our fuel. Because if you don't have diesel and you don't have fuel, you can't go to work, and you cannot transport items that you need to survive: medicine, clothing, food. It's getting too expensive for transportation. Not to mention, off our shores, we have tons of shipping containers just sitting there on boats. There's no reason why they can't come in. But it is causing a serious backup on our supply chain. Now, do you believe there's an agenda? Let's continue to listen in.
Just here in, the North American continent, that is what we have seen since the beginning of the year. Now, are those numbers higher than normal? That's one of the questions when I did a lumber video on how many lumber yards were catching on fire before. And this is where, like I said, it gets a little...
You heard you said magically lumber yards were catching on fire. The material you need for shelter?
Little trickier if you try and investigate things past like the last 12 months, because then information starts disappearing, we forget about it, and it's hard to do a full-on comparison. But I could get some pretty good numbers looking back at 2021. December 12th of 2021, Westside Food Processing Plant in San Antonio, Texas caught on fire. On November 20th, Maid-Rite Steak Company in Kansas City, Kansas caught on fire. On September 13th, JBS USA in Nebraska caught on fire. On August 24th, Patak meat processing facility in Cobb County, Georgia, caught on fire. On July 31st, the Tyson River Valley ingredients plant in Huntsville, Alabama, caught on fire. I've read in some places that that was a poultry plant, whether it was a combination of ingredients and poultry, I don't know. On July 25th, Kellogg Company in Memphis, Tennessee, caught on fire. In April of 2021, Smithfield Food Plants in Mammoth, Illinois, caught on fire. And January.
Do you still think these are coincidences? Do you still think these are the norm? That this happens? This many food processing plants in a short period of time around the world? Okay.
12th, you had the Deli Star meat plant in Fayetteville, Illinois, catch on fire. So if you compared just 2022 to 2021, there seems to be a much stronger pattern this year of these food processing plants catching on fire, having planes crash into them, or being struck by lightning, or random boilers blowing up. Point is there's a significant amount more. That I could only find about 8 from 2021 versus the 18 that we've had in 2022.
Those aren't coincidences. It's not just that these food processing plants are being burnt down. Also, our livestock are being destroyed. The government is forcing people to kill entire livestock of chicken, claiming that they're dying from a special type of bird flu. They're wiping out herds of cattle, claiming that they have different types of mad cow disease. You see, they put the poison in them and then claim it's some kind of virus. Sound familiar? So they're reducing our food supply around the world so that people start starving. Then chaos breaks out. Then it becomes the survival of the fittest. They sit back and watch as we kill each other just trying to survive instead of coming together now and stopping it.
Is this some sort of conspiracy? Let's go through a few more things, and then we'll get down to this in just a few minutes. It's important to note that these plants and stuff, the numbers are high enough to have an impact on our food supply. When the potato chip plant in Wisconsin caught on fire, you know, they supplied a significant amount of potato chips to the West Coast. And so all of that is adding to the pressures that we've already had in our food supply chain, which apparently broke down because of a global pandemic, COVID. I would argue that a lot of these things started breaking down before then. There's also been another recent pandemic.
They have. But what the virus breakout did was expedite everything. Now it's speeding up the process. Go research Agenda 2030.
I've been criticized on the channel because, you know, I talked about this bird flu, and a lot of people are saying, well, it's not real. It's not real. It's fake. They're using these tests, and there's no doubt that these tests occasionally have false readings. But
So the tests that they're using to test livestock for different diseases sound familiar. Let me know. Somehow there's a lot of false positives. So they're lying about what is in our livestock.
Well, the bird flu, believe it or not, is considered a rare bird flu. You won't read this in a lot of newspapers. You won't read this on a lot of the mass media websites. But it is a rare bird flu in that, similar to the design of COVID, this particular flu seems to be designed in such a capacity. Yes, I'm talking about the bird flu. But this particular bird flu seems to be designed in a specific capacity in which it can stay dormant in waterfowl for up to 3 to 4 weeks.
You know what he said? Designed. Not only are viruses designed to be put in human beings, but also inside animals.
It's very hard to track where this bird flu went before it started showing up in all these other places, because like COVID, it was designed that way. So I wouldn't necessarily write these things off as, you know, not real, that these tests are giving you false positives. I agree with that to a certain extent, but I also think that the virus is a very real threat. Whether or not it is another bioweapon, I don't know. We are trained to think that bioweapons are these things that, you know, create zombie apocalypses. But in reality, they're often used to disrupt supply chains, to disrupt food sources, things like that. And you know, we can't say that any of these things were ever created maliciously and put out there maliciously, but they have created multiple different types of bird flus. They've also created multiple types of coronaviruses, and who knows, maybe another virus magically escaped a lab in China. Now, another interesting thing that's happened recently is that the Rockefeller Foundation, which is supposed to be an elite think tank to help solve problems of global crises before they happened, came out with a timeline of doom of about 6 months, saying that in 6 months we will have reached the point of extreme global food shortages.
That brings us around to fall. This fall coming up. You know, right around the same time that we most likely will have the biggest financial crisis ever, which also happens to be the timeline for an anticipated new virus outbreak that's being predicted by the same people, including Johns Hopkins. So a new outbreak, a financial crisis, and a food shortage all at one time. What are the odds?
So basically, they've just given us a countdown to HE double hockey sticks. If the Rockefeller Foundation came out with something like that, I would listen to them because they seem to nail the last global catastrophe right on the top of the head. I would personally take that as a warning, something that we should pay attention to. But if you wanted to give somebody credit with coming out with the prediction of this timeline, you'd have to actually give it to the Club of Rome, who back in the 70s used a computer model to actually pinpoint a lot of the things that we've been seeing the last couple of years. Now, you're probably thinking, yes, but Charlie, a lot of these things appear in some cases to be man-made. I never said it wasn't the perfect blueprint. What I'm saying is that a lot of these think tanks have been talking about these things happening in the same timeline, all occurring around this time frame. And so when they come out with these reports,
You know, the creation of the New World Order. The same New World Order that Biden was talking about. The same New World Order that Yellen was talking about when she said a financial world order.
whether they're in your mind corrupt organizations or not, you should pay attention to them because they seem to be occurring even with predictions made back in the 1970s. Okay, so let's talk about some of these food shortage situations because the more we understand them, the more we'll have answers and the more you'll be able to be prepared for them. Number one, the current food shortage situation, the big one on the table is, yes, the Ukraine-Russian war. Why? Because it's the breadbasket of the world. A lot of the world's grains come from Ukraine and Russia. That's just the fact. That part of the world supplies a large majority of the grains exported across the world.
Now, you could call it a coincidence or you could say whatever you want, but the World Economic Forum has what's known as a young global leaders. Take a look at who some of these leaders are. Elon Musk, Zelensky, Ukraine leader, Putin, Russian leader. Yeah, they're amongst the young global leaders. So what you got to ask yourself is this a planned war? I mean, if your goal is to reduce the world's population, then what's the big deal if you fabricate a reason to have a war with one another? Meanwhile, Putin handles all the fertilizer for most of the world. Ukraine has the grains and feed. This only adds to the food shortage. What are the odds that they would all be part of this young globalist leader? Now, the one that surprises me, of course, is Elon Musk. Everybody's making this guy out to be a hero. Is he? Is he really?
Whatever it is, your pasta, you depend on that region of the world. It's also a very large producer of things like sunflower oil seeds. And so when we think about all of the vegetable oils that we depend on, vegetable oils are used in filler and everything these days. When you create a shortage of vegetable oils, you create a lot of shortages of the foods that you generally see in grocery stores. It's interesting, when we in our farm series, we did some work in St. Louis last year. Those videos are going to be coming out. But we actually did a lot with some groups talking to them about what a food desert is. And basically in food deserts, those people only have those types of filler foods. It's not nutritious. It's not something that, you know, I would prefer to eat, but it is something that a lot of people depend on. So these shortages do create very real calorie shortages for the majority of the population. whether you eat it or not. And that's the reality that we're facing with that. The Russia-Ukraine war also is a major disruptor for fertilizer, because a lot of the ingredients that you need in fertilizer comes from Russia. And so when we put sanctions on them, and actually we didn't have to sanction that, Russia cut it off. We don't have all of the ingredients we need for fertilizers. We don't have all of the, the gas that we need to create fertilizers. There's a lot of different issues that we've created with just that war that are preventing a lot of farmers from getting fertilizer this year.
Seriously, what a coincidence. I'll leave a link for his video so you can watch the rest of it, but he goes on to notice that there's also a diesel shortage. So how can you get shipments when there's no diesel? There's no fertilizer. There's no grains to feed the livestock. The livestock are getting wiped out because we're told that they're infected with different types of viruses. But the item that's being used to do the test is given a ton of false positive. Does that sound familiar? So everything is projected for this fall coming up. Food shortages, market crisis, new outbreak of a virus. This is why you need gold and silver. You need something outside of the system. When this market crashes, what are you going to have? They're going to start pushing us into the central bank digital currency. Once that comes out and you're enslaved to it, that's it for you. That's it for your family. That's not hyperbolic. That's reality. Anyways, hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel. And I surely do appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. I'm out.